Hey guys, this is Miss Hall, and we are going to work on this week's reading lesson, and it deals with 4.RI.6, which is first and second hand accounts. So, first, I want to show you two anchor charts that explain what a first hand account is and what a second hand account is. So, if you look on your screen, the first hand account it's a primary source. It's a description of an event that comes from someone who was actually there to see or experience it. For example, we've all heard of the Titanic ship that sank many, many years ago. A first-hand account would be if one of the survivors that made it off the ship actually wrote a passage about what happened while they were on the ship. That would be a first-hand account. It may include personal opinions on the topic, emotions and feelings surrounding an event, very specific details, a specific focus on one part of the event, and details from first person point of view. You will hear a lot of I did this or we did this. Type of text where you will find a first hand account would be diaries or journals, interviews, autobiographies, memories, letters or emails, speeches, or legal documents. Now, we're going to focus more on first-hand account today, but I do want to explain to you really quickly what a second-hand account is. A second-hand account is a description of an event based on research, a description of an event given by someone who was not there to actually see the event occur. So let's take the Titanic example. First-hand account was somebody that survived the sinking and came home and they wrote about it. They used a lot of I's or we when they're talking about the account. A second-hand account would be somebody today in 2020 who goes online, researches the Titanic, and writes a whole page about information that they learned. They would not use I, it would be more like the survivors, they did this, they did not do this. So you hear more of they. And they weren't around to experience it, the writer wasn't. So they are telling something that happened that they weren't around to experience. So we're going to go back though to first hand account today. Tomorrow we will do the second hand account. And so for first hand account, we are going to look at a passage, and this passage deals with an experience in space. And remember, this one that we're going to be reading about is a first hand account. And it is actually written by Sally Ride, and it's called From to Space and Back. And this article is about what Sally Ride experienced on her space flight. Okay, so here we go. Follow along. Launch minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The three launch engines light. The shuttle shakes and strains at the bolts holding it to the launch pad. The computers check the engines. It isn't up to us anymore. The computers will decide whether we launch. 3, 2, 1. The rockets light. The shuttle leaps off the launch pad in a cloud of steam and a trail of fire. Inside, the ride is rough and loud. Our heads are rattling around inside our helmets. We can barely hear the voices from mission control in our headsets above the thunder of the rockets and engines. For an instant, I wonder if everything is working right. But there's no time to wonder and no time to be scared. In only a few seconds, we zoom past the clouds. 2 minutes later, the rockets burn out, and with a brilliant whitish orange flash, they fall away from the shuttle as it streaks on toward space. Suddenly, the ride becomes very, very smooth and quiet. The shuttle is still attached to the big tank, and the launch engines are pushing us out of Earth's atmosphere. The sky is black. All we could see of the trail of fire behind us is a faint, pulsating glow through the top window. Launch plus 6 minutes. The force pushing us against the backs of our seats steadily increases. We can barely move because we're being held in place by a force of 3 Gs, 3 times the force of gravity we feel on Earth. At first, we don't mind it. We've all felt much more than that when we've done acrobatics in our jet training airplanes. But that lasted only a few seconds, and this seems to go on forever. After a couple of minutes of 3 Gs, we're uncomfortable, straining to hold our books in our laps and craning our necks against the force to read the instruments. I find myself wishing we'd hurry up and get into orbit. Launch plus 8.5 minutes. The launch engines cut off. Suddenly the force is gone, and we lurch forward in our seats. During the next few minutes, the empty fuel tank drops away and falls to Earth, and we are very busy getting the shuttle ready to enter orbit. But we're not too busy to notice that our books and pencils are floating in midair. We're in space. Okay, so what do you notice about this first-hand account? Well, something that I immediately noticed is there's the use of the word we. It didn't say they like a secondhand account would say. So, like here, in only a few seconds, we zoom past. All we can see. We can barely move. We've all felt. So, not only is this talking about Sally Ride, but it's talking about the other astronauts that are with her. I also noticed there's a lot of feeling in here. She talks about how it feels when they're experiencing the G-force, the couple of minutes of 3 Gs that she experienced, and she expresses, what it's like when they're counting down. So there are a lot of feelings. There's a lot of her experience of what's going on. Her head's rattling around. They can hear the voices from mission control. If this had been a secondhand account, you wouldn't get a lot of those personal feelings because obviously an author that's writing a secondhand account did not actually experience it. So the benefit of a firsthand account is that the person who wrote the passage actually experienced and felt what was going on in their description. So that makes it, in my opinion, a little bit more authentic because you're actually getting firsthand what was going on. Whereas somebody that writes about it 100 years later, they can research it and research it and research it. They can't talk about their feelings on it because they did not experience it. Okay, guys, so we're going to stop there today. So remember, this is your first-hand account. Tomorrow, I'm going to introduce you to the second-hand account passage. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.